Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to start on our book club. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, chapter part two. Now, before I start part two, we're going to do part two this week, next week part three, the following week part four, and then I thought I would take the rest of June off and not have a book club. And who was the person who told me about Breakfast with the Buddha? Was that you, Lori?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Lori.
Well, tell us.
Anyway, I've started the book. I got it, for $6. Breakfast with the Buddha by Ronald Marillo. Let's get up there. And so far, it's very good and it's a fun read. So I thought maybe if everyone thinks about getting Breakfast with the Buddha,
Okay.
and then now, and then we can read it for the rest of June, and then in July we'll just do this book in July. How's that sound?
What was the author again? I was writing down Breakfast
Okay,
with the
here it
Buddha.
is.
Roland M.E.R.
And it's a fictitious book, but it's so far very good, about a man who has to travel across the country with a Buddhist monk, and he's not too keen on doing it. So it kind of he has a good sense of humor. Does that sound right, Lori?
Yeah, I actually only read half of it because I have it on my Kindle, and I was going on a trip. I was visiting my daughter and granddaughter in Albuquerque. So I read it in the airport. I read it during the plane. Once I got there, I was too busy, playing with my granddaughter and everything to read it. So I only got halfway through it. So now I can finish it.
Yes. Like the first half?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah. I think for us in our Sangha group, it'll be good. Even if it has things in it that I've only gotten to page 40, but it was an easy 40 read. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's an easy read. And so I thought, you know what? It'll be fun with our understanding of our Sangha and the Buddhist philosophy and so forth in this group that we have right now. Just to see what that perspective, especially after reading the Dharma Road and that perspective. So not that it's right or wrong. But
how's your book coming before we get on mute?
Oh, well, that's one reason why I better take a little time off, because I always can think of more things to do, making classes and stuff,
Yeah.
You always can feel, we're in this staycation, and I'm busier than ever. I am. I have 1,000 things to do. Always have something else new to do. Yeah. All right. Now, before part two, last time I put you guys on mute, but we got 6 people. I'd like to go around and ask anyone before I start saying my feelings. Do you guys have just like 3 minutes, not a real long thing, but what they think of part two before I influence it? Yeah, Lori raised her hand first, and then I'll go to Barb K. It said Barb C.
On page, my glasses. I better put my glasses on. Hold on. I can't even read the page number. Okay, on page 59.
Yeah.
When I read this near the bottom, I thought immediately of Lindsay, because we are all so grateful that you're doing this for us. And I'm going to start. It says, and the more Jonathan practiced his kindness lessons, and the more he worked to know the nature of love, the more he wanted to go back to earth. For in spite of his lonely past, Jonathan Seagull was born to be an instructor. And this is when I thought of Lindsay. And his own way of demonstrating love was to give something of the truth that he had seen to a gull who asked only a chance to see truth for himself. Doesn't that sound like Lindsay?
I want you guys to see. Absolutely what you said, and I wrote read. Because I think it's the truth for all of us. Don't you think? When I read this, chapter 2, part 2, is really the definition, in my opinion, okay, so it's my opinion, of Mahayana Buddhism. And Mahayana Buddhism is where you go on a journey and you find the truth and you become enlightened, and then you become a bodhisattva, and you don't go to nirvana, you come back and you share the truth. And so you'll find that Mahayana Buddhists practice teaching all the time. Now, they don't go out and try to convert anyone, because that's not part of Buddhism in the slightest, but they will practice teaching. They do a lot less meditating and a lot more teaching.
So is that what you are then?
Well, I think of myself as interfaith, everything. But for if you were going to say, if you had to say for the philosophy of Buddhism, I definitely am on the path of the Mahayana, because it's not, I find enlightenment an expression of authentic joy when I'm interacting with other people, you know? And then when we stop interacting and I move along, I still carry that joy from that interaction. You know, it's part of my purpose and meaning. The other thing is, in one of my classes, from the YMCA class, I did a thing called How to Learn Faster through FAST, and it was this FAST, and it was by a gentleman who wrote this up, but I was teaching it, and T stood for teaching. So those who think about how to teach are those who are actually learning the most. Because when you're a good teacher and you think you're going to teach something, and you know this from, Lori knows this from her piano, you have a way of teaching, but that doesn't mean the student has that way of learning. And a good teacher understands that the student has different learning styles, and it's not right or wrong, it just is the way life and human process is. So a good teacher envelops the whole concept from many points of view, which means it really gets down deep into the core of the brain, the neuroplasticity, because you have to think about it from different levels. So the more I teach, the more I know, right? And then the more I know, the better I can teach.
I learned the most in all my years of teaching piano, which is many. I learned the most from teaching an adult guy who had dyslexia.
Yeah.
And I learned the most about teaching piano because he would play the left-hand notes with his right hand and the right-hand notes with his left hand.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was just fascinating to me how he was good.
Yeah, yeah, but he was different. And so your brain had to process that different is good.
Yeah.
Let's get Nancy on. I'm excited. So let's see. All right, now Barb Kimball, do you raise your hand? What did you want to say?
Well, I sort of had an aha the night after I finished reading it, chapter 2, although it's sort of the 1 and 2 all together. And what I was doing is, after I was done reading it, I decided I was going to try to draw. I have some pencils and a pad, and my cousin and I are trying to learn how to draw and practice. And so I was doing some stuff with the tree that was in the backyard, and it wasn't that great, but I was really joyful and focused and everything and doing it. And then I got up and I asked my husband, like, oh, what do you think? And he was very nice. He says, oh, it's very nice. You know, how good is it? But I was thinking, as it related at night to the Jonathan Livingston Seagull, is, you know, instead of just being comfortable with being on land and flying over to get the fish and then come back, that I was sort of flying way out of my comfort zone, and I'm sure I'm falling with trying to draw and not do well, but I'm going to get back up and I'm going to try it, you know, getting out of my comfort zone. And then I even, as I was sort of thinking, having me think, and it doesn't really matter what my husband thinks of it, because it's really just something I'm doing for myself, and it's the process that is really fun. And I just sort of had like that aha, you know, that it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm enjoying it. So
That is
I'll keep flying.
I'm going to use your example when I go through the chapter, if you don't mind. That is so great.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm doing, you know, Better with Age, my class there, and we're doing memory. And one of the big things that all these scientific things, I'll just jump to the end of that class. Well, I'm not going to tell you one. There's two things that help your memory and your cognition, two major things. One of them, I'm not telling you. You have to come to my class.
I'll be there. I'm going to be there.
But the second one is that you have to do something you don't know how to do. So it's not practicing the piano and it's a song you already know. That's not it. You have to practice the piano and learn something you don't know. It's learning something totally out of your comfort zone, correlates to you keeping your cognition, your brain cognition as you age. Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
That's why like a book club like this is good, because everyone knows how to read, but you have a new book and you have new thoughts, new ideas, new expression. And that means you're activating new neurons in this concept, and that'll help our cognition. So if anything, just come and read the books for memory, you know, but you have to talk about them and think about new concepts, not just melt into them, because they're like, just knitting and learning and just practicing the same knitting isn't what they're talking about. They're like, if you know how to knit, then you better learn how to sew, do something totally different. Where you're actually making neurons, new neurons. Does anyone else would like to say something before we start? Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead, I'll do this, and then we'll circle back around. And the good news is these chapters are these parts are so short. And I'm going to just go on to speaker view for this. Okay. All right.
And go ahead and mute us.
Oh, okay, that's a good idea. So I'll mute you all, and then we'll unmute. Okay, there we go. Okay, so it starts obviously on page 41. So this is heaven. The very first sentence. Now remember what he was picked up by two other seagulls and flown somewhere else. And it says, this is heaven. And what is that? That's a judgment right away. Okay, so he has a preconceived concept of what heaven is and that there is a heaven. So it starts off right there showing him that he has expectations. Okay, and then it further goes down and he says he was even so faintly disappointed because his body couldn't like do all the magnificent things he thought it should in heaven. So once again, you can see that he has a limited belief system as he entered the next realm. He's not fully enlightened. He still has carrying concepts with him. So it's still a limited, it was still a limited that would be greater effort to crack. In heaven, he thought, there should be no limits, meaning that he has expectations and attachments. And we all know in expectations and attachments, as much as we would like to think they free us, quite often what they do is they hold us in a belief system that can be exhausting or really tiring. So even like when we are becoming more enlightened in ourselves, we carry old stories. So he has a story that he's carrying into his new realm of transformation and consciousness. So then it goes through on the next page and it talks about, and he finally, standing there on the beach, still without a spoken word, he was asleep. So that is his limited belief, and he's now in the new, and now he's going to sleep, and then he awakes. So what he's having is the transformation into the new realm, and then once he goes to sleep, he wakes up, and he's now realizing where he's at, and he's open to it, and it's very much like a monastery. Isn't that right? They have all the other seagulls flying around and so forth, and they're all thinking at this monastery, they're all communicating through telepathy, right? Instead of squeaks and cracks. And then one of them goes on and says, there's only one answer we can see, Jonathan, is that you're pretty well a 1 in a million bird. Most of us came along even so slowly. We went from one world into another that was almost exactly like it. Forgetting right away where we had come from, not caring where we were headed, living for the moment. Do you have any idea how many lives we must have gone through before we even got to the first idea that there is more to life than eating or fighting or the power of the flock? 1,000 lives, John, 10,000, and then another 100 lives until we began to learn that there is such a thing as perfection, and another 100 again to get the idea that our purpose for living is to find that perfection and show it forth. The same rule of truth for us now, of course. We chose our next world through what we've learned in this one. Learn nothing, and the next world is the same as this one. All the same limitations, lead weights to overcome. Reincarnation. That book, so you can see the influence that this book is really very Buddhist, is what it is. He is totally explaining reincarnation, and if you don't do the work in this lifetime, then you're going to end up just doing it again and doing it again. And every single day, I want you to know we're reincarnated to ourselves. We wake up, we fall asleep, and we wake up. And if we don't do the work of dealing with our fear, or dealing with our expectations, or dealing with stressful responses, whatever it is, we'll go back to sleep, and when we wake up, we'll be in the same spot, having the same reaction. And he's saying little by little, we keep going to sleep and waking up, and only if we do the work do we get to change. So that's huge. So we have reincarnation from sleep and awake in our own lives, and then they're talking about lifetimes. So I thought that was very interesting. Come on, boys. My little puppies are wanting to be with me. So the next page on 45, they start talking about heaven. Chang, this world isn't heaven at all, is it? And then he said, you're learning again, Jonathan Seagull. See, he just thought once he went to a higher awareness, he had hit heaven. But what he did was just wake up a little bit, right? So no, Jonathan, there is no such place. Heaven is not a place, and it is not a time. Heaven is being perfect. Now, this really throws me off a little bit because in my vocabulary, I am not attached to the word perfect. I don't like the word perfect. I think it's very imperfect. I think it sets up expectations. That means you have to be able to walk on water, you know? So I have to always take a breath every time they use the word perfect. If I wrote the book, I would have used a different word. But he does explain what perfect means. You will begin to touch heaven, Jonathan, in the moment that you touch perfect speed. And that isn't flying 1,000 miles an hour or 1,000,000 or flying at the speed of light, because any number is limited and perfection doesn't have limits. Perfect speed, my son, is being there. Being. B-E-I-N-G is his definition of perfect. Now remember, this is all written about the here, being there, you know, being here and now, being in the human being. So perfection is not about how fast or how hard or how much you do. It's about being in the present moment. And that's what he starts. So to learn how to be in the present moment, you have to learn skills of letting go and forgiveness and dropping regrets and all this work, right? That's kind of like flapping our wings. But ultimately, when we become enlightened and we don't have to flap our wings anymore, we don't have to do all that work, we're just in the present moment, in the being state, knowing everything is perfect the way it is. You see how big that is? So that's a huge part of this. So when I see the word perfection, and he speaks about perfect, being is what he's really talking about. Being a human being in the present moment. Get past my pictures. So then he goes on and he's talking about travel. You can go any place. I'm on page 56. And you can go any place to any time that you wish to go. I've gone everywhere, every when I can think of. He's starting to get the idea. It's not about work, it's about thought. This is where you're starting. Now you're finding out what true heaven is of the mind, of the being state. And he's starting to define it. It's not about flapping the wings. It's strange. The Gauls who scorn perfection for the sake of travel go nowhere. So let me put the word being here now. And it'll make more sense. It's strange. The Gauls who scorn being here now in the present moment for the sake of traveling, going somewhere, actually go nowhere. Because they're doing. You see? So that's what that statement he's saying. Those who are trying to do are missing out being, and then they go nowhere. They might go to the other side of the island, but when they go to sleep and wake up, they're at the same spot. Those who put aside travel for the sake of perfection go anywhere, instantly. So let's change the vocabulary here. Those who put aside travel or doing for the sake of being here now go anywhere instantly. Remember, Jonathan, heaven isn't a place or a time, because place and time are so very meaningless. That's just so powerful, right? He's saying stop doing and start being. And you go down a little bit more and he says, you must begin to fly as fast as thought to anywhere that is. You must begin by knowing that you are already arrived. You're already there. In other words, that is the secret. The book, The Secret. If you read the book, The Secret, that's the secret right there. He has the whole book, The Secret, right here in Jonathan Livingston Seagull. You have to realize you're already there. As soon as you think that you're missing something, you've missed it. As soon as you think you're lacking, you're lacking. As soon as you realize that we're all interconnected in thought and the energy is universal and there's abundance of energy everywhere, then it's all yours. And you don't do anything, you just know it. Right? So incredible. So he goes on and he says, as perfect as an unwritten number everywhere at once across space and time. So, the trick was to know that his true nature lived as perfect as unwritten number everywhere at once across space and time. He's saying that the trick is to know that you're not limited by your humanness. Everyone has Christ consciousness or Buddha nature, or that we're intertwined, that the energy is always there. You're not enlightened. You just forgot that you're enlightened. We're not trying to learn something new. We're trying to wake up to what we already know. That's what he's talking about. You're waking up to what you already know. It's the human expectations, or him, we says, so this is heaven. I thought heaven should be different. It's all these lists of things that you've learned and so forth that start blocking you and putting you in boxes and organizing you away from your inner truth. It's saying that you're not good enough when you're a little kid, or you need a certain amount of money to be successful, or you need to have a title, a PhD at the end of your word. All those limitations shut off the truth that you're already perfect just the way you are, your true nature. And that's what he's speaking about here. So it goes on and says, forget about faith, okay? You don't need faith to fly. You need it to understand flying. This is just the same. Now try again. So he's saying, sit there, and he's trying to say, he's trying to transport himself, remember? And without flying, he's like, you've got to let go of your restrictions of your faith. See, as soon as and that's what's that, I'm forgetting what it calls, whatever, I'm forgetting what it's called, but they say if you see the Buddha kill him, you know, and Koyan, whatever. Anyway, the bottom line is if you use Buddhism or faith as part of your only way to find enlightenment, you've already boxed yourself in with expectations. It's so much bigger than that. So you can use your faith to get there, but ultimately you have to let go of your faith because there's no defining and no boundaries. Everything is already intertwined. As soon as you say you have to do a certain ritual, you have now boxed yourself at a lower level of connecting with everything. Does that make sense? So at least this is how they're saying. All right. So he goes on and he says, he starts anew. He goes, okay, so I'm on page 58. He stood there okay. So when he was able to transform, okay, and then jump, right, into space and time, and he went to the other planet and so forth. And so he comes back and the other people see him and they say, or the other gulls see him. And he said, he stood there, congratulations, for less than a minute. I'm a newcomer here. I'm just beginning. It is I who must learn from you. Now that's important because he now has learned about transformation, but the bottom line, he stays a beginner, an open-minded. He stays humble. He doesn't say he knows it all. I must still learn from you all. And they're like, no. He's like, no. I have to learn with you. I am part of you. I'm no different than you. And I think that's real important. He didn't see himself as a god or put himself as a pedestal. Once he learned this, he's like, no, I'm still learning. I'm still learning and growing. I'm still doing. So it goes on. And it says, till you can fly. Okay. So it goes on. He says the flock aside. Okay. We can start working with time if you wish. So he's going to keep learning and training. It says, till you can fly the past and the future. And then you will be ready to begin the most difficult, the most powerful, the most fun of all. You will be ready to begin to fly up and know the meaning of kindness and of love. So that's on page 58. So remember, fly means transformation. So if we change that to you can transform and understand your past and the future, okay? And then you will be ready to begin the most difficult, the most powerful, and the most fun of all. You'll be ready to begin to transform and understand the deep, profound meaning of kindness and love. Now, what he's saying is until past and future, that's the human experience. So that means your past are your attachments and your future are your wants. You have to work with that human experience of saying, well, I made mistakes and I'm bad and all those old things. You have to work through that. And that's what a lot of us have done. You understand your own programming and then realizing they're just stories. And then your wants, you have to realize that you have to let go of wanting wants. And once you can let go of that attachment to the past and the future, you come into the being of what really matters, which is always kindness and love. So you let go of the right and the wrong, the past and the expectations of the future and the regrets of the past. You've worked through all that. Then where do you end up? You end up here where you don't have suffering. When you let go of attachment, and where does suffering, when you feel non-suffering, is when you're in kindness and love. And ultimately, this is where we're all going to. So that's what he's saying. We still have to do some work, but once we get there, we can release and let go and we can move. And And he just keeps talking about that we're going to keep practicing, which I love, because that's what we talk about. He doesn't talk about trying so much. He needs to practice these things. And this is what we all do. We keep practicing. And then his person, Chiang, vanished. And he said, keep working on love. So ultimately, can you love anyway? And that was something that I loved that Mother Teresa always said. No matter what's going on, can you love anyway? With this life, can I love anyway? In this pandemic, can I love anyway? If someone steals my money, can I love anyway? If I get a health scare, can I love anyway? If someone dies, can I love anyway? That is the state of true enlightenment as a human experience, is that you can say, I can accept what it is and I can still love anyway. I'm not going to be bitter. I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be broken. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to be a bully. I can love anyway. I'm so much bigger than the human experience. I'm love. And that's what he said. So then it goes down to exactly what Lori read. Jonathan practiced his kindness lessons. And the more he worked to know the true nature of love, the more he wanted to go back to earth. So once you have been able to let go of the suffering, maybe pain we have to have, but suffering we don't have, is optional. He's learned how to let go of the suffering. Then you can teach, all of us, and teach by example, the most powerful way to teach, right? So go back to earth. For in spite of his lonely past, Jonathan was born to be an instructor, and his way to demonstrating love was to give something of the truth that he had seen to a Gaul who asked only a chance to see the truth for himself. So now they've taken the word perfection out and they've put the word truth, because before they called it perfection, but now he switched it. They didn't say to see the perfection for himself. Now they've transformed the word into the truth. The truth is that when you can center yourself in love, that is the highest state of being as a human experience, or as a conscious experience on our human plane. That's the way we want to see it. To go back and to help others. And so that's very much, like I said, is the Mahayana belief of what it is. Okay, so he goes and he tells his friend that Sullivan that I'm going to leave. And the guy said, I think I'm going to miss you, Jonathan, which kind of makes everyone laugh, because to miss you is attachment, right? So, Sully, for shame, Jonathan said in a reproach, and don't be foolish. What are you trying to practice every day? If our friendship depends on things like space and time, then when we finally overcome space and time, we've destroyed our own brotherhood. But overcome space, and all we have left is here. Overcome time, and all we have left is now. And in the middle of here and now, don't you think that we might see each other once or twice? So he's saying, don't be attached. Let it go. Go with the flow. If we know the truth that we're all interconnected with energy, then do we have to be sitting next to each other? The answer is no. And when someone passes, and has transformed, are they gone? No. If you realize that we're all interconnected in this energy, then there is no reason to ever feel that we're alone, because we can't be alone. If you feel alone, then you have space and time as ruling you. If you don't have space and time, you just have here and now as the present moment, then we're infinitely everywhere at all times. Okay, it's kind of big stuff, but you guys picked the book. No, I picked it too. Okay, goodbye, Sully. We'll meet again. And with this, Jonathan held a thought, an image of the great gull flock on the shore of another time. And he knew with practice ease, that he was not bone and feather, but perfect idea and freedom of flight, limited by nothing at all. So he's telling you he let go of that his human experience, and he was able then to transform into the teacher and go back to help the gulls, that he was much bigger. Then it goes in and you are introduced to Fletcher Lind Seagull, which is of course the next generation of people knowing. I keep saying people, but seagulls, okay? And he is getting the voice in his head, which is the higher consciousness, which is Representative Jonathan Livingston Seagull coming back and speaking from a higher plane, his higher knowing. The voice came inside his head, and though it was very gentle, it startled him so much that he flattened and he stumbled in the air. Don't be harsh on them, Fletcher Gull. In casting you out, the other gulls have only hurt themselves. And one day they will know this, and one day they will see what you are. This is huge. Forgive them and help them to understand. So when we are breaking the chains of old limited belief, people will not agree with you, but that's okay. You don't declare them as wrong. It's part of their journey. So I think that's very important. So he said, you're going to have to forgive them. And if you go to the next page, which is the end of this chapter, he says, I want to fly. Fletcher Lind Seagull, do you want to fly so much that you will forgive the flock and learn and go back to them one day and work to help them know? There's the journey. This is the journey we're all on. Can we forgive ourselves from things that we've done? Can we forgive other people and our cultures, whatever our history? We have to do that. That's the first thing for us to really learn. We have to learn to forgive, to realize that we're so much bigger than those limited beliefs, and we can't hold anger attached to other people's limited beliefs. Once we can let go of that negative human impulse of saying things are right or wrong, then we can learn and grow. And when we learn and grow, then we will learn to love more. And then ultimately we end up coming back to the collective consciousness and helping changing the consciousness of the flock, or in other words, of humanity. But the first step is forgiveness. The second step, because you can't be in fear and you can't be righteous, then the second step is learning. And then when you go to learning, you always are learning, but then you can go and help and you teach. Barb, I was talking about your art that you were talking about, that you went out, and what was so important and what I wanted to bring up is that you went out and you drew, and so you were being in your drawing. If you went back and you went validated from your husband and that was important, his opinion, then you would be doing, because you're not having a moment in the here and now. When you were drawing, you were actually seeking out validation from somebody else. And that takes your personal power away. And what was so beautiful is that, yes, you drew, and you drew in the here and now for yourself, for your own inner growth, to really absorb this moment and this feelings of who you are, and see and push yourself in your own flight. Like, can I draw? Can I get better? Whatever, you're just pushing yourself. And then it's fine that you went and asked your husband, but you came to the realization it doesn't matter if he liked it or not, because that would then be giving it away, and it would be doing. If you were asking, you're like, it's fine to share it, but ultimately you could stay in the being of it and go, even if he said it was horrible, it's irrelevant of his opinion. And even if you said you didn't like it, that's okay, because you're learning and growing. You're just flying. you're being in the present moment. And that's what the book's talking about, is can you be in that present moment without feeling insecure, without that little girl wanting validation, without criticizing, without feeling flawed, or even when you see yourself being imperfect in producing this artwork, it might look like crud, you're like, that's fine. That's a fine thing. It's okay to fly and not tumble, right? You just keep flying for the sake of opening up your own heart and trusting yourself to grow. And that's why that was such a great example that you said that made you think of chapter 2, because that's exactly what chapter 2 is about. It's about us trying things out of our boxes and opening our hearts. And maybe we'll fall and maybe we'll tumble, but not to judge it as right or wrong, but saying it's us expressing the here and the now. And allowing and practice this ongoing practice of forgiveness and allowing ourselves to have mistakes is going to perpetually get you to such a higher level of consciousness, because when you stop judging yourself, you stop judging other people. And that's huge. And as soon as you stop judging yourself and you start loving yourself or being kind to yourself, then you're able to love and be kind to other people. You can pretend to love and be kind to other people, but if you're sitting around belittling yourself, then the truth is it's not really a true, genuine, enlightened love and kindness. It has a lot of expectations when you put it out there, because you want them to love you back, so because you feel broken and you're asking them to mend you. So when you're loving them, when you're feeling bad and you're loving them, you're asking them to love you back so you can feel better. But that's not what we're talking about in this book. That's not being here and now and opening our heart and learning to forgive with ourselves. But when we love ourselves and we love someone else, we don't ask to be loved back. It's just a genuine gift to give. And it perpetuates such incredible results in other people when they don't feel like they have some kind of expectations placed on them. Okay, so let me take me off of, put you guys back on here, and unmute yourself. You guys can unmute yourself as you want. But did you like, I'll just ask Barb K, what you like about how I said about the art?
Yes, yes. And that was true. That's the aha that I got.
That is beautiful. Namira, do you want to add something?
Oh, I really liked what you said. One thing that I did like in this chapter, there was just that little section on page 61 at the bottom. He said he knew with practiced ease that he was not bone and feather, but a perfect idea of freedom and flight, limited by nothing at all. I really liked that. And thinking that this is having, you know, no delusions, just really, it's sort of just, I guess, being fully enlightened. And I really like that concept, that not being hindered by all the things that we have around us that shackle us, and, you know, our expectations and what you were just talking about. I just really like that. Yeah,
I agree. I think the book is so much more profound than I remember reading it.
Yeah.
All those years ago. I was like, I got the gist of it years ago, but now I'm like, oh my God, this is like the Buddha waking up. You know what I mean? It's written in.
Yeah, but you're helping us get more of that from it. As I read it and I got some, but you're taking it deeper than what I got. You know, it's like, oh yeah, that's right.
It's
cool. Yes,
I
agree with that.
Yeah, it's very cool. How you doing, Connie? Would you like the book? You want to unmute yourself? Let's see if we get her unmuted. She's looking.
Okay, there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yay! I learned something new today. Yeah, I really like the book. I've never read it before, and I've heard people talk about it in the past, and it's really pretty deep for me. But I'm just picking up some really cool stuff out of it. Like, I just feel like we're really kind of already in heaven. there is a heaven. I mean, each level that you take yourself to,
Yes.
I mean, it's up to you how far you want to go with it, you know. But I had to go back and reread this probably 10 times, and each time get something totally different out of it. But it's nice for somebody to explain it in another way to me.
Well, that's what I think I'm shocked too. I mean, because I told you guys before I read the book, I'm like, oh, I'll get online before I reread the book. I'll get online. Well, I think I read it once and then I go, well, I'll get online and see if someone has some commentary, kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, there must be some professor who's analyzed this book. It really wasn't. I was like, people are like, what's about a bird? And he transforms. And I'm like, I get so much more out of this book than these people are saying, at least what I found. So I was so excited to say, well, I got my Sangha.
Right?
I'll dive into this book. You know?
Lindsay, you can write the cliff notes for Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
I think I'll piss off every 7th grader in the world. They'll be like, I don't know what to write about this. I know Carolyn and Nancy, we can't see your picture, but do either one of you want to unmute yourself and say something? Let's see. I don't know if they can. They might be able to, might be driving. Something that.
Carolyn can't. She doesn't have a microphone or a camera, but she can do chat.
Oh, okay. Okay. I understand. But she can hear us, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And Barb, the other Mick Phillips, would you like to add your 2 cents? There she is.
Yeah, I really liked that chapter a lot. I was trying to bring myself down a little bit before I got on here because I was doing something new on the computer and I got really frustrated.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for everybody here and that I could take this little breather from that. But when I did read that second part, it was super, it really brought home the importance of, for me, for trying or for practicing being here, just being. And I've been meditating a lot on that, so maybe that's why that meant so much to me, but just being can be so profoundly beautiful. And it just feels like, I mean, the little taste of that experience that I've had makes me love so much more the people around me that you commune with on these Zoom meetings. Because I think, I mean, I don't want any expectations because I do have issues with that. But when you are in that, I guess, here and now, or just that being state, I think it's probably the most loving feeling you can probably experience. But then again, am I putting a limitation on it by saying that? I'm not sure. But I like that idea. And it makes me feel really close to people that I don't really even know. And just makes, I guess, the love inside us all just removes more layers of that, I guess. So that's all. Thank you.
That's kind of big. No, but I agree. And I think we have to remember we're all human beings. We are humans. We have the amygdala. We have our culture. We needed our parents. We needed restrictions. We needed boundaries. We needed rules to grow up. We did. And our parents tried and our culture did the best they could with what they had. So part of that is, you just forgive that, but that's the human experience. And then like Mother Teresa says, but can you love anyway? That's why I think she's an enlightened human being, is she's not saying, she's not condemning or stopping. I don't want to, when it comes like the Jewish heritage, my husband's family has the Jewish heritage. I really love it. I just think it's so much fun. There's a lot of guilt we get in this family. I see it come. And that's a restriction and a boundary that I see in the culture on his side of his culture. And then on my parents' side, on my Protestant side, the work ethic that you can never do enough. You never can do enough. You're never good enough. You have to work harder. You have to work harder. So that's a different thing. So I have both of them. And it's not that I'm going to reject either one of them. Part of loving anyway is accepting and saying that and dancing with it, but not being squashed by it. There's a difference. You can dance with your humanness, but you don't have to be squashed by it. And that's no matter what, and that's what they're going to go into the next chapter. They still have to learn to fly, right? You don't just get born and then jump and then all of a sudden sit on the beach and learn how to handle, transcend. That's not what the journey is. The journey is to know how to fly and to love anyway, no matter what's going on. And that's why, if you remember in Buddhism, there's 3 gems. There's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. He didn't say 2 gems. He didn't say 1 gem. He didn't say 4. He said 3. The Buddha is the Buddha nature within ourselves. The Dharma is the teaching, your teacher, your book, your experience, whatever it is. And equally important is what Barb was saying is the Sangha. To feel safe, to be with people in which you can feel safe to communicate, to experience, to learn, and to have this feeling of unconditional love. 3, the Buddha, us, the teaching, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So on that note, we got a great Sangha.
Yeah.
We really do. So last thing I want to remind for those who got on late, get the book. This is a book that I have not read the whole book, so I'm not saying I know, but we're doing it. Breakfast with the Buddha by Roland Merlo. And we're going to start this in July. So we're going to do 2 more. We'll do part 3 next week, then part 4, and then we'll take like 2 weeks off. So if you guys order the book now, you'll get it. We'll have plenty of time. And then we're going to come back to our Sangha. And we'll I doubt this book is going to be like the book we have now.
No.
But it will be fun. Lori's like, no.
It's lighter. It's
Yeah. It's not like every sentence is like a profound statement.
You know what? This book that we're doing now, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, is the perfect book for this COVID virus, because otherwise you could get really depressed.
Yeah.
And it's very uplifting.
It is uplifting. And where we're at right now, and part of this understanding is exactly where we're meant to be. You might not like it on a human level, but you can love your existence and love your being no matter what. And if you can go there, everything is okay. Everything's okay. So on that note, I'm going to say namaste.
Namaste.
Awesome. I'll see you tomorrow
next week.
for my class. And if not, I will see you back. Chapter part 3 next week.
Pat from Carolyn.
Yes, Carolyn. Yeah, and Nancy, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay.